Did you know that Pakistan is going through its worst economic crisis right now? You probably already knew that the South Asian country hasn't had a stable political system in its 75 years as an independent state. But did you also know that the radical group it created is eroding its territory? Yes, we are referring to the dreaded Taliban, who have conquered a sizable portion of Pakistan and are currently controlling the country in an alternate regime. When you discover that this has occurred at a time when Pakistan is already experiencing floods, inflation, and a host of other socio-political problems, you will begin to feel sorry for the nation. In this episode, I'm going to walk you through the nuts and bolts of the South Asian geopolitics that include Pakistan. We will dive deep into the rise of the terrorist organization, the Taliban, and how it has changed the Pakistani political landscape. Let's get going. Everyone believed that the Taliban would only look within its borders when they seized control of Afghanistan from the American troops, but it also established its own organization, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, or TTP in Pakistan. And now that the Pakistani branch of the Taliban has grown so strong, on December 31, 2022, it declared the establishment of a parallel government in Pakistan, challenging Pakistan's very authority. This government even has a cabinet of ministers, including departments for the military, education, political affairs, espionage, and even construction. As a result of the country's worst ever inflation rate of 30.6% and the fact that 25% of Pakistan's population has already been impacted by the floods, this is disastrous for the nation. The root of this conflict dates back to the 1980s when the Soviet Union was trying to capture Afghanistan. The US had to dispatch troops to Afghanistan as part of its Cold War campaign. It couldn't let the Soviet Union seize control of this vital region. The United States chose to enlist Pakistan as a strategic ally in the fight against the Soviets. Together, they devised the brilliant idea to arm and fund the local Afghan fighters, rather than sending their own troops. This was a less risky and more affordable way for the US to save the lives of its own troops and avoid any accusations of human rights violations that invariably comes with military incursions. But although the US succeeded in driving out the Soviets from Afghanistan, it ended up creating a Frankenstein monster that will turn on it. The war-hardened Mujahideen fighters, plush with the US supplied weapons, formed a group called the Taliban. Pakistan and the United States kept funding various Afghan groups even after the Soviet Union left in order to ensure that they could maintain control of the unstable nation. These organizations included religious gangs, and over the time Afghanistan developed into a haven for terrorist groups. These fundamentalist groups had ideological hate against the West in general, and the USA in particular. They saw America as an anti-Islamic force, a collaborator in the suppression of Palestine and the destroyer of Iraq. Things got really out of hand when a group called Al-Qaeda carried out attacks on the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center on 9/11 in 2001. America retaliated and invaded Afghanistan with a stated motive of destroying Al-Qaeda terrorist training camps and military installations of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan. Given the history of Afghanistan, this war was not going to be easy nor quick. American army stayed in Afghanistan for 21 years. During their occupation of the war-torn country, they carried out an extensive military operation and eradicated almost all terror hideouts. However, US Army, which is the most powerful army in the world, could not wipe out or even control the Taliban. There were three reasons for their failure. One, Americans did not understand the basic Afghan culture. They spent millions in establishing a legal system in the country only to realize that modern courts do not go well with Afghan society. Second, there was a lot of corruption among US officials. They spent $760 million and ended up making substandard schools that weren't equipped to teach basic math to students. Lastly, they could not adapt their standard war strategy to the mountainous Afghan terrain. They should have connected nodal cities by building roads through the mountains. So after spending 21 years and $2.3 trillion, the Americans could not achieve anything meaningful in Afghanistan. The Taliban took advantage of the population that was distressed by the long war and took over Afghanistan the moment the last American soldier left. Military hardware worth almost $7 billion has been abandoned in Afghanistan and is now in the hands of the same enemy that the United States has spent 2 decades trying to force out. The Taliban is now not just a militant group, but an organized unit with both money and power. It funds itself from the lucrative opium cultivation and its global trade that emerges from Afghanistan. A significant portion of opium is grown in the fertile Helmand province, which borders Pakistan, so it's not surprising that the Taliban was desperate to take control of this region, which it did in 2015. Then they started collecting protection taxes from the opium farmers. They also reaped millions of dollars in revenue by shipping goods in and out of Pakistan. According to BBC, by the end of 2018, the Taliban was making $1.5 billion a year in the face of the United States military. This gave the Taliban a tremendous advantage. Pakistan gained a great deal as well. Afghanistan is a landlocked nation, and Karachi in far-off Pakistan is the nearest port for it to ship something across the country. 75% of the materials were shipped by the Americans from Karachi to Afghanistan via this path, via the Khyber Pass. They even entered Afghanistan through Pakistani territory. They provided Pakistan with a lot of assistance and money in exchange for this access. The tricky aspect of the story is that support for the Taliban was divided among Pakistani citizens. While some Pakistani leaders backed the Americans, others backed the Taliban. Irrespective of this divide, the Pakistani government kept using the Taliban as an instrument to keep control of Afghanistan. This is a standard geopolitical device, though. To maintain authority over smaller neighboring states, every big country uses this strategy. But why are these two sides engaged in combat if Pakistan's government was aiding the Taliban? Well, the ethnic composition of Afghanistan holds the key. The Pashtuns make up 42% of Afghanistan's people, making them the largest ethnic group there. This tribe is split between Afghanistan and Pakistan by the Durand Line drawn by the British during their exit from the subcontinent. 2/3 of Pashtuns live on the Pakistani side of the line, which makes this political border quite irrelevant for the tribe. According to Pakistani estimates, about 50,000 Afghans move back and forth every single day across the border. Taliban troops crossed the Durand Line from Afghanistan to Pakistan during the American occupation. They took some time to rest, arm themselves, and then assault the US Army. This is why it made sense for the Taliban to establish its Pakistani unit, which they did in 2007 under the name Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, or TTP. The Taliban was able to freely transport goods into Afghanistan, as well as treat their injured fighters in Pakistani hospitals and speak with their operational leaders there. In some instances, they even had commercial and real estate holdings in the Pakistani cities of Peshawar and Karachi. The Taliban were incensed when the Pakistani army began to fence these borders, which led to the start of the Pakistan-Taliban War. Resource deprivation apart, the Pashtun population cannot be separated from their cousins across the border. The TTP has not only declared its sovereignty over the semi-autonomous FATA tribal region in northwestern Pakistan, but is also wreaking havoc in the country. Its declared goal is to topple the Pakistani government by conducting a terrorist campaign against the Pakistani military and the government. The group has established itself as an umbrella organization for different armed Islamist militant organizations operating along the Pakistan-Afghanistan border. It has brought the state of Pakistan to its knees and forced it to sit with it at the negotiating table in international forums. Pakistan is crumbling under the dual attack of economic hardship and TTP's invasion, and eventually has fallen victim to its own creation. With this, we wrap up this episode of Informed Investing. Do you think Pakistan's South Asian neighbors will be affected by this crisis? Will this give an opportunity to China? Drop a line in the comments and let me know. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon and the like button if you enjoyed the video, in order to stay updated and get notified when I upload a new one.